So Jim, you've been at this for a while, 30 years or so. We'd love to get your sense of this.
30 years. I was born 30 years ago.
And you've been at it since day one.
I had those kids. That's true. So actually, I'm the coach. I'm the founder and co-chair of Too Small to Fail. So I'm glad Dana gave you the whole big deal on Too Small to Fail. We're really proud of that program. And Mark Benioff, who should be here, but I think he's doing something else tonight. That thing that's screwing up traffic in San Francisco. And Mark and Lynn and Bert over there and everybody else who've been so awesome partners in doing Too Small. So let me give you my background. Actually, Susan asked me earlier, so you're an entrepreneur? I said, no, my whole life career is kids. That's true. So my mom was a school teacher in Harlem, the South Bronx. My little brother, Tom, who does climate change stuff, used to be a hedge fund guy around here. We grew up in a family. We went to really elite private schools, like I'm sure many of you sent your kids to. But we had a mom who was teaching in Harlem, the South Bronx, the whole time. And so that really shaped our whole life choices. So I took a year off between high school and coming out to Stanford and taught in the high school in Harlem. I really am a teacher. That was my life work. Between Stanford and going to Stanford Law School, I was a teacher. Never taught early childhood. Had to have 4 children to understand the joys of the early childhood experience. But in truth, I think that's what all of us ought to look at this lens through. I was a civil rights lawyer for a while. I ran the NAACP Legal Defense Fund on the West Coast before I started Children Now. And then before Linda Birch and Jane and others helped us build Common Sense, and Dan Kingsley gave us free office space for the 2 years. The first 2 years of Common Sense's growth. Thank you very much, Dan. But the truth is, this is fundamentally a discussion about what do we care about in this society. You know, Jen, you said that at the beginning, and what motivated you to get into the work you did, both when you were studying and then when you came back here and built the foundation. Look, this is really a sense of what does this country care about? And do not, no matter what you hear in the bogus debate I was just listening to before tonight's thing, this is about the future of this country. It's about the future of the Bay Area. And by the way, even for those of us who have the great good fortune of raising kids and sending them to great preschools, my kids went to the little school here in San Francisco, or Pacific Primary, or wherever, Temple Emmanuel, whatever. This is all about giving every kid in this country the right start in life. And I want to just give you a very brief snapshot of how I think you can approach it through the lens of parents, educators, and advocacy. Because Chris is right. At the end of the day, if you don't do the advocacy piece, you can forget about it. Because we could amass all the wealth in this room and within 100 miles of this room, and you still wouldn't be able to finance the early childhood investment we need. So that's why advocacy is so important. So let me give you, I'll sort of explain. Well, one thing I want to say is this too. It's the 1-year anniversary of Battery Powered. Michael, thank you and Sochi very much for building this institution, having the foresight to build a program like this. But the truth is, we're at a unique and I think very positive moment when it comes to kids' issues in this country. And I am only 30 years old, but I've been doing this for those entire 30 years of my career. And so I'll tell you, we are at a very interesting moment of opportunity in terms of kids and education in this country. And I think you have to look at it through 3 different lenses. And I'll frame the work that we do at Common Sense in that way. So for those of you guys who have kids 5 and up, you know we do 3 things at Common Sense. We rate, educate, and advocate. And the reason we started Common Sense was to build AARP for kids. Because we felt that kids needed a voice like AARP or the NRA or the Sierra Club. That did not exist. But to get there, but kids are not a constituency. Isaac, or the kid you're just talking about, these kids do not vote, they do not sit in corporate boardrooms, they do not take on Donald Trump in debates, and they do not speak for their own future. So parents and educators and all of us have to do that. So the reason we built the rate side of Common Sense, the consumer platform, which I first met you through, Michael, was because we actually just wanted people to join. So we realized that people didn't understand the impact of media and technology on their kids. So we built a consumer reports guide. And about 10 years later, we have 50 million users, and we read every movie, TV, video game, you name it. And now what we do in early childhood is we rate all the apps and games and TV shows and videos that people who have kids under the age of 5 or 6 need to know about. Because there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff. So you have to curate that. And you have to do it in English and Spanish, by the way. You can't just do it for our audience. You have to do it for the broad audience. For example, in California, the state that I live in and most of us live in, what percentage of kids under the age of 5 are Latino? 54%. are Latino today, right? They don't look like us. These are the kids in East Oakland or East Palo Alto. They may be looking like you, Dan. But that's the point about the extraordinary changing. Yeah, but no. Yeah, but now I'm looking at the audience. That's the, not you. No, but it's true. People, we have to understand the changing face of this state and this country if we want to care about kids and we want to care about early childhood. And so part of what you have to do is speak to parents. And you have to give them simple, easy-to-use resources that just like the Too Small to Fail campaign, the talk, read, sing stuff that we do, because there is this huge word gap. But you have to give people easy, simple, accessible materials to be better parents, because it's not that easy to raise little kids, and everybody in this room knows that. The second thing is you have to also look at what educators can do. One of the big problems we face now is, you know, I think you said this, Jen, what do you need, 6 units of some kind of course, and you suddenly are an expert as an early childhood teacher. That's insane. We wouldn't entrust the most important assets in our society to somebody who graduated from high school and had 6 units of one class and suddenly became an early childhood expert. But that's what we do in California, that's what we do across the country, and that has to change. So at Common Sense, what do? We've built programs that are here in the Bay Area and then across the country that educate caregivers about early childhood provider practices, but also how do you deal with the fact that a lot of parents are giving their kids an iPad or an iPhone or other technology devices at age 1 and 2, so they walk up and swipe a screen on the TV and think that it's an iPhone. So there's a huge issue now with kids, by the way, about the impact of media and technology on their brain development, and then on the neurons and the synapses that you were just describing, Dave. So a lot of what we also have to do is, A, educate those teachers, give them resources, give them to them in Spanish and English and Mandarin and other languages that represent the diversity of this culture. And then we also have to do research. So we've invested several $1 million over the last few years in research on kids 0 to 8 and the impact of media and technology on kids from birth to 8. We brought copies of those reports here. You should take a look at them. It's quite remarkable because Dana is exactly right about the critical nature of brain development during that period. And as Chris knows well, the federal government stopped funding this stuff about 10 years ago. It's ridiculous. NIH, no more funding of that. So much of this comes through private foundations and donors like the Rainin Foundation and others. But this is critical. If you really want to educate parents and educators about this, you have to do the research. We now are one of the major research institutions in the country on this, and that's because we've stopped funding it, and that really needs to change. We did the Too Small to Fail campaign with Hillary and the Clinton Foundation and UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital in Oakland and San Francisco. And it's been a remarkable success because this is the laboratory, by the way. For Too Small to Fail, we have 2 laboratories, the Bay Area and Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, believe it or not, largely because of one major benefactor, George Kaiser, is one of the great early childhood states in the country. And so this is the kind of stuff that we also have to invest in, education. And finally, let me talk about advocacy, because we really believe in advocacy, and Chris is a fabulous advocate, great colleague of ours at Common Sense. You cannot scale this without a fundamental investment in advocacy in this society. So at Common Sense, the reason we got those 50 million users and 96,000 schools is because we want all of you and all of those folks who use our free stuff to become advocates for children in early childhood. And that's exactly where we're going. So in California, 2 years ago, we had a big fight with our governor, Jerry Brown, who we like, but he doesn't believe in early childhood or preschool. And we got $270 million out of him after some very hard negotiations to put into pre-K and TK in California. We asked for $1.2 billion and settled for $270 million, but at least it was a start. The second thing now is we've created a commission called the Right Start Commission in California that featured some of the best experts in this state on these issues. Nadine Burke-Harris, your colleague who runs the Youth Wellness Center, George Miller, the great congressman just retired who moved it back to California, Darrell Steinberg, the key senator, some of the, Linda Darling-Hammond, my Stanford colleague, who runs the Teacher Quality Commission in California, because we have to give California a plan. This is what you have to do for advocacy. You have to lay out a plan, and then you have to convince the politicians to actually put some money behind it. So you will see this December a new plan for a fundamental new investment in California's early childhood called the Right Start Commission. And then with the help of Chris and others, we will franchise that legislation across the country. I have no confidence anything will happen in Washington, D.C., by the way, but it will happen in state capitals around the country. And so we need that. At the end of the day, what's interesting about speaking here is that this community in the Bay Area is the source of so many innovative things, whether it's new technology platforms that you, Michael, and other of your colleagues built before you built the battery, whether it is innovation in health practices that UCSF has done, and even Stanford, don't forget Stanford, whether it is the extraordinary talent and innovation spirit that I think the Bay Area represents, and that Mark and Lynn Benioff, who are actually hosting their Dreamforce stuff tonight, have financed in such a big way. And the one thing I'd say to people here is Mark and Lynn are the real deal on this stuff, guys. They put their money where their mouth is. And so for folks out there who are thinking about philanthropy, we do have some great examples of people. My little brother, Tom, does the same thing too. And there are people in the Bay Area who are really big investors in kids and climate change and early childhood. So that is the message that we're all saying to you, is not just that this is important, but you can have an incredible impact if you invest in the right stuff. So think about what you can do in your own home as a parent with your new little child. Think about what you can do in the early childhood provider programs and then the local children's hospitals. And then, as Chris and I both said, think about advocacy here in California, across the country. This is a time where we are having a discussion, even in the right-wing Tea Party groups, about inequality in America. Well, if you want to deal with inequality, you start at birth, and you start at giving kids the right start in life. So what I would tell you is, despite some of the challenges we face, this is an extraordinary moment of opportunity, and it's up to all of us to do something to change it. Thank you.